Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world and what platform you're watching / listening to. This is the Wrestling with Faith podcast. And again, bringing you in on one of the Wrestling Volume podcast as well. You can find us at Twitter, Faith_Wrestling. You can also get us on Facebook at facebook.com/Wrestling with Faith, UK, Wrestling with Faith UK on Facebook, and on youtube.com/wrestling with faith. And if you want to be on the podcast to talk about any of the things or all three of the main topics that we talk about, which is wrestling, which is faith and mental health issues, just drop me a DM, drop me a message, get in touch, and we'll just take it from there. And without further afield, it's a rarity that I get to speak to people from the town, from the city that I live in, that I was brought up in, and somebody that is well traveled in the world of wrestling, who only lives about 30 minutes away from where I do as well. And it's an absolute pleasure to have on today's podcast Nathan Cruz. Nathan, the most important question I'm going to ask you today, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing good, actually. I recently had quite a bad back injury, literally a few weeks ago. I was wrestling and I really hurt my back, and I've been really bad on my feet since. But a couple of visits to my osteopath, and today in particular, he really realigned everything that had twisted pelvis, and he's got me sorted, and I feel great. So like today, I'm doing really good because this is the first time in about 10 days now that I've like not been in absolute agony with my lower back. So yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Even more blessed to have you on the podcast today, mate. Do you know what I mean? That you're fighting fit. So praise God for that, man. That is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had a back injury. Now, I actually got the pleasure of seeing you wrestle recently at the 1PW event in at Donny Dome, the All or Nothing. Your injury didn't have anything to do with the murder hawk by any chance, did it? Like he wasn't to blame, or partly to blame for that, was he? Because man,
No,
that
like
guy
well,
is rough, isn't he? Do you know what I mean?
he's
You know more
he's
than I do.
yeah, he's a big human being. He really is. But no, like this has been something that's been flaring up on and off now for a couple of years. It's just something that I just have to stay on top of, and I just had a bad weekend with it down in London. But no, yeah, he had nothing to do with it. But yeah, those events are something else. They really are. They're such a great atmosphere to be a part of. It's an energy unlike anything else.
It was amazing, man. And it was just such a great night. Obviously, we don't need to go into the events about what happened after the main event. You know, that's well documented. And
Yeah.
that is a very, very, very isolated incident. And as I'm sure you can tell everybody, being somebody who's been wrestling for nigh on 2 decades now, I believe. Is it over 18 years you've been actively wrestling?
17 years this year, yeah. I've been wrestling. August 26th, 2006 was my first one. So yeah. And in all that time, and I think I've got my match total written down as 1,842. So in all those matches, but obviously some of those will be shows where I've wrestled more than once on the same show. But I'm talking over 1,000 shows easy. I've never had an incident like that happen. Like that's the first time, as you say, an isolated incident. Like I'd hate people to feel like that's the type of thing that takes place at wrestling events because it really doesn't. I've never seen that happen before, and yeah, it is what it is. Though, and it was dealt with very professionally. I felt
It was.
Will showed why he's a world class superstar, in my opinion. There, because like that's what you do in the ring is superhuman, but what you just did there was like that's why you're a superstar, man. Like that was really, really well done by him.
100%. Just really got the crowd back and got everybody focused, got the young lad out back into the ring as well. A special night for that young man as well, like being stood next to the inaugural 1PW world champion as well. Like, so, fantastic. And do you know what? That all aside, mate, everything else on that event was absolutely spot on. And I want to bring it back to you as well, in particular, because seeing a lad from my home city, going up against somebody who, I mean, from where I was sat, mate, it looked like he was at least a foot bigger than you. I mean, that guy is that dude is massive, I should say, in the Murder Hawk, Lance Archer. But what was it like, though? I mean, obviously, I know you've wrestled many people from big promotions the world over, and I know that you're well travelled all over the world in various different continents that you've done wrestling. But what's it like getting in the ring with somebody like that who, for us wrestling fans, we've kind of grown up with over the last sort of 10 or 15 years from WWE to AEW and New Japan. What's that sort of experience like?
Honestly, I just kind of see it as another day at work. No, it's because like you have that definitely. There'll still be some people where I'll still get a bit. Oh, here we go. Like, but yeah, more times than not now, I'm just kind of excited to show them what I can deliver and what we can create together. And I just kind of enjoy that aspect of it a lot more now than and. Yeah, it's not that that isn't lost on me. Like the day I wrestled Jeff Jarrett was really cool, and I remember it because of my that was really cool to wrestle Jeff Jarrett. But yeah, he's at the same time it was just another day at work. Like I just kind of feel like okay, there's a reason I get booked into these matches, so let's prove that. Let's show people what I'm worth, and just enjoy it after that. Just enjoy what we get to do.
Mate, it was awesome. Honestly, it was a really, really good match as well. Obviously, I've seen footage of other things that you've done in other wrestling organizations as well. And obviously we'll plug that at the end of the podcast where people can get access to those as well. But it was a great night, and it was the first time like that I'd been to see you live in an event. And it was the first time ever that I took a good mate of mine to a wrestling show. He'd never been before. But even more importantly, my eldest son, it was his first ever wrestling event. So at 16, you know what it's like. They think they're too cool for school. Oh, wrestling. Oh, no, wrestling's not for me. And like, honestly, they were like, the build up throughout the event, coming to your match as well. I was like, that dude there was like wrestling the Murder Hawk. I said, he's from Hull. Behave. I said, legit. I said, just Google it now. Do you know what I mean? It's from Hull. I said, so it just goes to show that anything can happen, doesn't matter where you're from. So yes, obviously at that 1PW event, it was a great night for me as a wrestling fan to be able to see that. I've got to know Steve Gauntley, who obviously runs 1PW really well, and obviously I know you've known Steve for a long time as well. But it was great. Like I say, I brought one of my really good mates along for his first ever wrestling event. But even more proud moment, it was a chance to bring my eldest son to his first ever wrestling event, and he loved it. And I was like saying, like the guy there who was like fighting Lance, I said, like, that guy's from Hull. I was like, they both looked at me like, nah, behave. I said, legit. I said, Nathan Cruz is from Hull. I'm like Googling it, looks obviously, why would they take my word? So obviously they're there Googling it. And it was just a really good moment, like just to see a local lad done good. Do you know what I mean? And being in those sorts of matches. I mean, take us back to the very beginning then. So young Nathan is inspired by wrestling. What was that moment where you first started looking at wrestling, and what were your inspirations to try and kick on from there and get to know more about the industry?
I just, it was always there. Like I think my dad watched it, and then we weren't fortunate enough to have Sky Television, but my grandma and uncle did. So my uncle used to record me like just this master VHS that would have like Spider-Man animated series, Batman, Power Rangers, all the stuff that I was into. And I think it would have been WWF Superstars, like that would have been on Sky One at around that time. So we're talking like 94 maybe. And I don't remember much from it. I just remember I remembered the British Bulldog because he was British. There was the guy in pink, who must have been Bret Hart, and the Undertaker, because I just loved the entrance. And the Undertaker, from that point of those early memories to when I like really started following wrestling, like I was a fan, like full into it. Like Taker was my guy all the way through to like, and when I was 10 years old, I remember watching WrestleMania 17. It was in his hometown, Houston, Texas, and great event. And I love the match with him and Triple H, but the moment after the match, Taker's like draped over the middle rope, he's got blood trickling down his head, and he looks out at the 63,000 people in the Astrodome, and he just verbalizes, "It's my yard." And I'm like, at 10 years old, I can tell you now that had such an impact on me, because I remember that moment thinking, I want to do that. I don't just want to be a fan. I want to do that. Like that was the moment. It was that moment where I was like, I like, to look back at it now, like I think it was that case of like Mark Calloway, who I may never meet, from Houston, Texas, has affected a 10-year-old kid called Nathan in Hull, England. Like, that's mind-boggling. If I could have that same reach, if I can do that, that's incredible. And that was it. From that day on, like, I was dedicated to try to become a professional wrestler. And then I was 15 when we found a local training school. Wasn't the best, but we didn't know at the time, because it was just we were just so naive to it.
Got, I suppose, don't you?
We was just we're just teenagers, and it was just naivety of like, oh, here it is, a wrestling school. Like, this is what we've been wanting all our childhood. Like, let's go. But I'd still go to the same place and do it all over again, because you don't know what that butterfly effect would may be. As bad as that start was, that led on to meeting this person and and then things just caught on from there. By by the time I was 18, by the time I was 19, sorry, I was taken on by All Star Wrestling on the full-time team. Like, I'd done my few of the local independents and a few others around like Birmingham area, and then got an opportunity with Brian, and I mean that was it. That was when my life changed. Like, really became a full-time wrestler.
It's awesome. I mean, still such a young age, like 18, 19, to be taken on full time by a promotion. I mean, you're still finding yourself. I mean, you're starting to come into adulthood and starting to find who you are, and your personality, and your trigger points, and what your likes and dislikes are, and things like that. I mean, that's epic. I mean, so from there, age of 18, you're taking on, you're wrestling more and more, and obviously you are getting stuck in with more experienced people who have been around the wrestling industry a lot more. You're learning how to take your bumps, to how to sell, how not to sell. And then obviously within the midst of all that as well, you've got to start forming a character, because as you and I both know, I mean, I've never stepped in a wrestling ring. Listen, I'm not against it. If somebody wants to use me as a toothpick or a punch bag, I'll do it just to tick that box. Do you know what I mean? But part of wrestling, as you and I know as fans, looking at it from a fan's perspective, is the performing arts side of it, is the theatre, okay? It's the heroes and it's the villains, it's the faces, it's the heels. So where did you start with that? I mean, did you try and start to be a crowd pleaser as a face, or did you slowly but surely, because as watching you, seeing your footage, I know that you love to play the bad guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know yourself in this industry, you can't stay in the middle. You can't be lukewarm. You've either got to be getting all the cheers, or you've got to be getting all the boos and all the heat. You can't stay in the middle, because if you stay in the middle, as you well know, you kind of get forgotten about, to a degree, unless you've got something that you can really make yourself stand out. So how did you start honing that side of your wrestling character, your wrestling persona?
I mean, that's the side that I was always blessed with, because, it was obviously that what attracted me to wrestling. The Undertaker being my favorite, and that entrance and all of that stuff. Like, that was the whole thing that attracted me to it. I love the athleticism and the wrestling as well, but like, when the Ministry of Darkness is sacrificing people and Austin's come out to make the save and stuff, man, that was just incredible stuff to me. Like, just thinking, like, this is the best thing on television. And that was the same, like, so I got into acting. Like, I was studying that at college after school. Like, I did really well at performing arts at school. Like, I left with an A-star in drama. I was part of the Rock Challenge team at Archbishop Thurston that went to Australia in 2007 and performed in Sydney at the Opera. It was incredible. But so I've always had that interest and that passion as well. Like, it would be my second interest. I think if I didn't pursue wrestling, I may have pursued acting. And that helped me a lot, because especially when I was at Hull College, and you learn how to do like acting to different audiences, whether it be a contemporary play or a pantomime. So see that as, like I said, that's the doing the independents with the adult shows, or me working in front of a Butlins crowd. Like, there's the differences and the similarities between it, and I just feel like it gave me a leg up. And that was the point where the character started to get developed, because I was like, I didn't know necessarily what I really wanted the character to be. I just knew that I could be a good bad guy. And then the idea was, well, I'm doing acting and I'm doing extra work. What if, and I'm 17, 18 at the time, what if I'm a teen celebrity? And at the time, there was a lot of that. Like, there was like Teen Cribs and all that garbage on MTV. So it was like, and people hated it, right? So I'm like, I want them to hate me. Like, what if I'm just a teen celebrity that, yeah, I get paid loads to do this extra work and I'm living a better life than you are and I'm only 17. That gives me every reason to be. So I had this, and I'd won an award at college, like for a best actor award, and it was shaped like an Oscar statue. So I started coming to the ring with that, the feather boas and the glasses, and I had like a Shawn Michaels entrance type of inspired entrance jacket and all that stuff. Because like that was the other thing, like the more that I watched wrestling from like a perspective of I'm starting to study it for like how I'm better my performance. And guys that I started gravitating to weren't necessarily people that I was always a diehard fan of as a kid. Like I could still learn a lot from The Undertaker, don't get me wrong, from how he may structure a match and tell his stories. But if I'm looking at like little things for my persona and what I feel my wrestling is, Shawn Michaels was the guy. Jericho was the guy, Flair was the guy, Triple H was the guy. Like these was the guys that I was just like zoned into if I was looking for like these character nuances that I was particularly looking for. I mean, when it came to like obviously Hall for Hall, I was always a Dean Malenko guy for like wrestling, or Brett for wrestling. But when it was coming to like finding these like things that are going to get under people's skin and like this, I've listed for the best villains in WWE history right there, in my opinion. And then and my love for Flair's heel work led me to Tully Blanchard. And then me watching some of Brett's stuff for like technical introduced me more to some of the stuff from Henning that obviously I was 3 at the time. So like I obviously don't necessarily remember seeing the best of Mr. Perfect, but like in those early stages where I was really trying to find the Nathan Cruz character and this villain, and I discovered those guys, I was like, okay, so now I can really, there was things I was taking from them all, and then there was just things that I was taking from movies and things like that I'd see, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I looked, the development of that initial character of the prima donna, Nathan Cruz, was one of my favorite things that I did. Like, it was just so fun because I was allowed to go out and make mistakes in front of like a holiday camp in Cleethorpes, and I was doing that every single week. Thanks, and it was like every Wednesday we had Cleethorpes, every Sunday we had Skegness at regular camp show venues for real deal wrestling, and it was awesome because it was the first time I was like, oh, I can really like practice stuff and let stuff fail if it doesn't work out. And the people who was training me at the time were on hand, like they were there, like doing ring announcing at the time. So it was just great. And I was getting so many. I wrestled Kid Cash that same summer. I was getting like really good opportunities to learn from people and develop. And I also think that was the summer just before I joined All Star Wrestling. And like that summer, I feel was like I had my trial for All Star that day. That summer, in Skegness, thanks to Mal Mason. Like he'd seen me at those Skegness shows for Real Deal Wrestling and was impressed, and he was well respected within All Star that he'd mentioned me to Brian. And but yeah, Brian didn't see me wrestle on that fair show. He weren't there. He gave me a job, but yeah, he weren't there. But yeah, it was a bit of a while after that. But Brian loved the character as well. Like that, I know that was one of the big reasons why he was so invested in me at All Star Wrestling. Is because he said he looked. You know, I had the tan, I got the hair, the glasses, the feather boa, and all that stuff. And he knew, like, oh, well, for Brian, that's great. You can put it on a program, you can put it on a magazine, you can put it on a poster, like it's an eye-catching character. And that's what was the intention. Like, I wanted it to be, but obviously you've seen yourself over the years, the characters had to evolve. And again, I think that goes back to my inspiration from The Undertaker and Chris Jericho, is because they're forever evolving their characters just to stay relevant. And you can't give people the same thing over and over again. But yeah, like those characters are just those villains you get to portray. There's something about that reaction that I just enjoy doing. I feel like it's easier to wind people up than it is to get them to emotionally like full on invest in you. Like you can really, it's easy to piss someone off.
And it is, isn't it? I mean, I've spoke to a few people from previous podcasts. I'm like, what is easier to play? Is it easier to play the nice person or the villain? And they say, look, Dave, it's like is in the movies. Most people remember the villains. You know, if you really relate it back to superhero characters, you know, like Batman. When you say Batman, people think of the Joker, the Penguin, the Scarecrow. You know, and it's like, oh crikey, yeah. And like in wrestling, you've picked a great era. I mean, because that was the era for me. Like I was in my sort of early to mid teens during the the Mr. Perfect, the Davey Boy Smith, the Bret Hart, you know, coming into the Monday Night War era. That was all that. And these guys, when you look back at it compared to the heels that we've got now, they were a lot more pantomime villains, a lot more sort of, and like sort of family facing villains, but everybody knew what they were, like Mr. Perfect spitting his gum out or waving his towel in someone's face, you know, things like that. And these are memorable times, you know. They might not have won all loads and loads of different championships, but when you talk about that era of wrestling, people can remember the faces and the heels because, you know,
they remember the characters. Like that's the thing. Like I've always maintained, like if you want to watch great wrestling, NWA in Japan, you are going to see great wrestling, but don't ignore the WWF and think that it is just aimed at kids, because like I said, you just mentioned Kent Hennig, Mr. Perfect there. Some of those matches are absolutely incredible, particularly the 1993 King of the Ring with Bret Hart in the semi-final is one of my favorite matches ever. It's just fantastic. It's so good. But WWE was always good at understanding how to market. That's what makes them incredible. And that's what makes them very different from pro wrestling, and why Vince labeled it sports entertainment is because he was trying to create something a bit different from that. Like, and you can kind of see that with those, as you mentioned, those almost cartoon characters, but they're marketable. People remember them.
100%.
People remember the mannerisms that those characters do and stuff like that. So it's, you know, not to go into it all too much, but
No, and like you say as well, like you look at that as well, like you say, it's marketable, the merchandise. I mean, we all grew up, whatever era of wrestling fan you were, you had the figures, and if you didn't have the figures, you had the PlayStation games. Do you know what I mean? Or you had like the N64 games, and man, it was just like incredible because it was a story. There was stories being developed. You were invested. It wasn't just like technical wrestling match. Yeah, that was really good, but I can't tell you why they were both in the ring together. Do you know what I mean? But then when there's a story behind it all, it helps massively. I mean, you picked out, like I said, some really incredible, poignant characters within the wrestling industry. Being a wrestler yourself, did you find that as time got on, as you perfected your craft, as you were rightfully getting the spots that you truly deserved, did you find that you started watching more and more wrestling, studying it, or being in the business? Did you find yourself watching less of it and just focusing on what you were doing?
It was more. It really was. Like it's like it's weird. Like I don't even mean it in a bad way. I like to put wrestling on to fall asleep to. That sounds weird because you think like if I'd be so into it, it'd keep me wired. But like there's a comfort to it. Like it's the only thing that can truly help my brain like completely switch off.
Right.
Like because I'll be watching it from a studying point of view and an entertainment point of view at the same time, and I'll just be like I'll be the way DiBiase fed for that was incredible, and I'll rewind it. Little things like that might sound like stupid, but just as a wrestler, you see those things and you appreciate them so much that you end up just watching it so much. Like I remember like one of the Butlins runs that we did with NGW in like 2018, like that was like our ideal night. So we're wrestling I was wrestling every night of the week because I was wrestling 6 nights a week for Butlins, and then I'd do the Brilliant Spa for Mega Slam on the Monday night, and that'd be it for 6 weeks. And I just relished in it. Like I was like, this is great. And then like I said, those evenings when we're at Butlins in the chalet, we'd get around and we'd all pick a match, we'd all eat our food together and just chill out after the show, maybe have a beer or two, and we're just watching wrestling and talking through like wrestling and stuff like that. It was just classic because I remember like I'd introduced them to a great match between Ricky Steamboat and Stunning Steve Austin from like 1993 at Starrcade for the US Championship. Brilliant match. And there's this amazing spot where like Austin's like trying to get away from Steamboat, and like out of desperation he goes to climb out like over the top rope, and Steamboat grabs him for an electric chair. And like me, Adam Maxted and Sean Custom ended up doing that same spot all week on the camps because it was just like it's so fun, and like I could as a villain like to be the one like swinging and falling on your ass and then trying to get out of the ring and oh god, they've got me again. Like
100%.
I loved it, absolutely loved it. And again, like yeah, you find you watch it a lot more, and then you're watching like people that you've known for years that have gone on to do great things. You always want to watch that what they're doing on TV and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a love that I'll always have, probably, wrestling, whether I'm in it or not.
And it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. And I've spoke about this with loads of people. I mean, like we're blessed now to have the sort of platforms to be able to watch anything UK-based wrestling-wise, as well as in Canada, America, Japan, and obviously in Mexico as well. You know, we've got everything from Lucha Libre to, you know, AEW to MLW to obviously WWE, you know, and Impact Wrestling. But we're also now blessed to see more and more British promotions getting on Fight TV and other networks as well to really showcase the talent. And, you know, would you agree that now's probably a better time than ever to be a wrestling fan and for people to maybe try and step in to get into the industry? Because do you feel that there's more opportunities now than there ever were? Or do you find because of their exposure, there's now less opportunities? How's it sort of working from somebody who obviously is a wrestler?
I think from a fan's point of view, it is probably the best time you can get into it, because there's going to be something for you. Like, you may not like what WWE does, but you might love what AEW does, or vice versa. Or you might love New Japan, or you might love just the British independents. You might love, like you mentioned, Lucha Libre, like whatever it might be, like you'll probably find something that you love. You might love deathmatch wrestling. You've got content for that everywhere now. Like with Rise from England, and then obviously over in America. Sorry, I've forgotten their name, but they're just GCW. Sorry, yeah. So GCW are doing great things. CZW is still there. Like, you've got that content available. I feel like for now, yeah, it's probably the best time that you could become a wrestling fan. The only thing that I see from my standpoint as somebody working within the industry is that I do think there's a bit of oversaturation. Like, as a fan, when I was a kid, I looked forward to 1-2 days of the week that I'd get to watch my wrestling, and I get to see what happened that week as well. Like, now I'd feel like there's so much content, you don't know. I wouldn't know where to begin. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it just, I think I'd be bamboozled by it as a fan. I think there's too much out there now, and it takes the shine off them becoming larger than life superstars. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't get me wrong, I still think if Roman Reigns walked through an airport, everybody's going to rush to him. But it's not the same magnitude that they had in even as early, as far back as like 2010 even. I'd say, like, guys would have been swarmed then still. Like, I feel like it's kind of taken that shine off it a little bit because of how much content is out there and how drawn back the curtain is now with all the podcasts that are on the network and things like that. But and the thing is, wrestling changes. It always does, always will do. What I grew up with in the Attitude Era, many people thought that was garbage and it wasn't wrestling. But I loved it, and I'll still tell you right now that I loved it. So, you know, I get that the wrestling's always going to change to try and stay current.
Yeah, Attitude Era was awesome. I mean, it had to be, didn't it? Because of obviously the Monday Night Wars and the fact that WCW, you know, when Hulk Hogan made that career-changing decision to become heel for the first time ever in the public. I mean, nobody in their wildest dreams growing up in the 80s and 90s could foresee a heel Hulk Hogan. And obviously that catapulted, obviously, with the Outsiders performing NWO. And obviously, again, you're on about oversaturation. Before you knew it, we had like NWO Wolfpack, NWO this, and it was just the same thing every night. But this is where you alluded to earlier in the podcast that Vince McMahon's genius came through, because, you know, dig deep with me, stay with me. I've got some ideas, I've got some development. Something's going to happen, something's going to kick on, and we're going to squash the competition, and we're going to come out rising through this. And, well, you know, come on, man. We know that everything else is, you know, is history on that one. We're coming to the close of the podcast. You and I could wax lyrical about this, amongst many other things, you know, that we spoke about off air, about faith, about mental health issues. And I do hope that at some point in the future, you know, when you're not busy, you can come back onto the podcast and we can touch upon some of those issues as well as obviously the wrestling and see where we come on from there. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I was blessed to see at 1PW. You know, you got in the ring with obviously the Murder Hawk, and that was awesome. And you know, you're on about like the stunning Steve Austin bit, or the with Ricky Steamboat. You know, you had those spots as well with Lance, and it was great. And obviously, to sort of see you get your comeuppance at the end of that match with D'Lo Brown coming out of. I mean, we were just like, that's D'Lo Brown, man. Do you know, nobody dropped any hints. And I spoke to Steve extensively before that event as well. No mention of D'Lo Brown coming out. Obviously, count you. You know, you getting pinned for the 1, 2, 3 on that. I mean, you know, and it's great to see, Nathan, that you know you're not just a good character for wrestling, but you are an awesome wrestler as well. You know, you've really
Thank you
on there, and I genuinely mean that. You know, and it's great to see again a local lad doing well, and I really, you know, I pray that it really kicks on from you and develop from there. Just before we come to the end of the podcast, and you can plug your socials, there's a quick fire question I'm going to ask you. So, congratulations, Nathan Cruz. You are the captain of your very own Survivor Series team. The only drawback is you're going against me and my Survivor Series team. Now, you've got to show your cards before I do. That's the stipulation. So you can pick 4 people, past, present, future, from any wrestling organization, male or female, people that are still with us now, people that are retired, people that are coming through, or people that have gone to be with the Lord. What 4 people would you have? What 4 wrestlers would you have backing you in a Survivor Series match?
Eddie Guerrero, FTR.
Yes. Your last pick.
I'm going to go Henning, Mr. Perfect.
Good shout. Good shout. Okay, then. So we've got some technical ability. We've got some people who know how to rouse the crowd up as well. And we've got some all-out brutish behavior with FTR as well. So I need to counter that. Okay. So I'm going to go old school. I'm going to counter FTR, and I'm going to go original 2 members of Demolition. Because in their pride. Because I'd love to see that in their pride. You've got Eddie Guerrero. So I need to counter that with somebody. So I'm going to go Kenny Omega with that. I think that would be a really interesting matchup. And you've got Kurt Hennig in there. So I need to find someone to try and counter Kurt Hennig with the swag as well. Man, you've really put me on the ropes with that one. Do you know what? Let's just. I'm going to play it safe. I don't care. I'm going to go Bret the Hitman Hart with that because that's going to generate heat either way. But it's also going to generate.
So it's a very good match as well,
and it's also going to generate awesome chemistry. So there we are. You know, we've got 7-star FTR in there, and I think Dave Meltzer will give us 7.5 for that match all day long. Nathan Cruz, it's been a pleasure, brother. You've got a couple of minutes. Please plug your socials. Where can people find you, get hold of you, get you for bookings, and where can they also see some of your awesome matches as well?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Nathan_Cruz90, Cruz spelled Cruz. I do what other social medias do I do? I don't really do social media. That's about it on the social media front. As I am the head coach of the Evo Wrestling Academy, which operates in Grimsby. I run the advanced classes on a Wednesday evening. If you want to get in touch with that, follow the Evo Wrestling Instagram page, and there's like a pathway if you're thinking of wanting to become a professional wrestler. The upcoming shows this Saturday at Lincoln for 1PW once again. So yeah, looking forward to that one. And then next one after that is in my hometown of Hull at the Hull City Hall, June 23rd for NGW for their 15th year anniversary. So yeah, very many special moments have been had in Hull City Hall. I'm looking forward to having more on June 23rd as well.
Awesome, man. I'm hoping to catch you at that one as well. So that will be awesome. Nathan Cruz, it's been an absolute pleasure, brother. Really appreciate your time. And this has been the Wrestling with Faith podcast. And hopefully not in the not too distant future, Nathan, you and I can catch up again soon. Really appreciate your time today, brother.
Thank you. God bless, Dave.
God bless, man. Take care. All the best, mate.
Bye. Bye.